Greetings, Venturers. This is Lorne, your guild advisor, with a very late story discussion for Part 1 of the current DanMemo 4th anniversary event, Aedes Vesta. I'll try to be better for Part 2. Like the previous 3 anniversary events, the main scenario is written by the author of the danmachi light novels, Fujino Mori-sensei. As with every anniversary event, he raises the bar with the story of the first part, clocking around 5 hours long on autoplay, as DanMemo continues its emphasis on having fully voiced events. Unlike Argonaut and Estrella Record, which fit quite well into the light novel canon, Aedes Vesta is similar to the first anniversary event Grand Day, which is also not canon. There are events that build up the lore of the danmachi universe which don't conflict with the main canon, but the present day events of the story do not line up with the events of the light novels. The event takes place in the danmachi universe where the danmachi movie, Era of the Orion, did take place, along with the main plot of danmachi up to the end of the Xenos arc. The story of Aedes Vesta is actually based on a storyline that Mori-sensei had in mind for danmachi after Bell's main story was over, so it'll be interesting to see what he does when Bell's story does truly end in the future. If the initial concept of Aedes Vesta was truly made with the intention to follow up Bell's story, then I think we're really in for something special with this event. In this Part 1 story discussion, I'll be highlighting a few of my favorite scenes and speculate on what's to come in future parts. As this was a very long Part 1, there will undoubtedly be elements of the story I won't be able to mention, but please feel free to leave your own thoughts about the story so far in the comments. Before I dive too deep into the story itself, I do want to mention that I'm really enjoying the improvements the DanMemo team has made in terms of presentation for the game. They've been experimenting with the placement of the character sprites and included some interesting effects in terms of atmospheric sound, imagery, and even some voice modulation. The moment when it was revealed that the time of the citizens was repeating is a particular highlight, though I do want to mention that it's very clear that the actual English translation definitely needed more polish, with the script feeling very awkward at times in terms of grammar and word selection. I don't like being too critical on this though, because I imagine it's very hard to get out a polished translation for these very high word count events when we're getting simultaneous releases with Japan, unlike some other mobile games that work off a delay between the Japanese and global versions. That being said, I still feel like it should be addressed. One thing that feels off with the setup of the event is that, though non-canon, it takes place after the Xenos arc, but none of the Hestia Familia members act apprehensive towards Hermes, who definitely wronged them during those events. It's just something we have to gloss over because I imagine they did not want to adapt the resolution made between Hermes and Bell, because that involves adapting content from the light novel past where the anime has currently left off. Towards the beginning of the event, we're introduced to Ilia, a priestess of Vesta for the mythical land of Olympia. One interesting thing from Roman mythology is that Ilia and Rhea are referred to as the same person, whereas there are separate people in Aedes Vesta, with Rhea being the head priestess. In actual mythology, Ilia was known as a Vestal Virgin, which is quite similar to her role in the event. She also has some bad history with the Roman god Mars, whose counterpart in Greek mythology is Ares, but I don't think that part of her story will be brought up. Ilia did not exactly leave the best first impression with how aggressive she was acting towards Bell, but over the course of the story she started to grow on me, especially after it was revealed that she wanted Bell to hate her, so it would be easier for her mentally for when Hestia would ultimately sacrifice herself to sanctify the primordial flame. It also helps when Ilia is voiced by one of my favorite voice actresses in Ayane Sakura, nicknamed Ayaneru. If you follow the Japanese voice acting scene, it's especially funny hearing Ayaneru's voice constantly argue with Bell, who is voiced by Yoshitsugu Matsuoka. Though Aedes Vesta gives us a good chance to see present-day Hestia Familia be together in a way that wasn't possible with the previous 2 anniversary events, I want to temporarily bring the spotlight to what seems to be our female veteran group of Ryu, Aisha, and Asfi. We see these 3 strong and experienced female adventurers often grouped together in the light novels, and they shine particularly well here in this event as they bring an air of experience and discipline that Hestia Familia just can't. Their inclusion is very appreciated to me, mainly due to Ryu, I won't lie, but viewing parts of this event through these three is a positive. I also really enjoy seeing how much respect the Hestia family members have for Ryu, which is no surprise given how much she has helped them. I imagine this Veteran 3 will continue to play important parts in the story, especially given the fact that Hestia Familia has been severely weakened in terms of combat strength with how Part 1 ended. One thing I brought up in previous speculation videos is the relationship between Hephaestus and Aphrodite in Greek mythology, and how they were lovers with Aphrodite being very unfaithful. I wasn't sure how Omori-sensei was going to bring that element of the relationship into the DanMachi universe, but it seems he went full in on this aspect with Hephaestus and Aphrodite, by showing that they previously had a romantic relationship, a big blow to Welf's confidence. I am hoping that we'll continue to see more interactions between Hephaestus and Aphrodite in the future. I am very much enjoying the fact that we are seeing Hestia have more serious moments in this event story, and I think the game overall does a better job with the balancing of the more clingy and silly parts of her character with her mature side, unlike how the anime adaptation seems to handle her. Her voice actress, Inari Minase, gave me chills in the story when she used her deeper voice for Vesta's voice lines. Not gonna lie, I prefer Vesta's demeanor as a character over Hestia, but I think that has a lot to do with her voice and her design aesthetically. Please feel free to set me on fire. Ethan is a pretty interesting character, and I don't think Omori-sensei really made too much of an attempt to hide how suspicious he seemed the entire time, though I will admit I was not expecting the twist of Olympia being a city that was technically already destroyed. I speculated previously that Pandora would be referenced in the story in some way, because Pandora's box is often associated with the story of how Prometheus brought fire to the human world, but I did not think Omori would move away from Pandora being a person to instead being the ruins of Olympia, a direct consequence to trying to keep the flame in the lower world. I figured Hestia was going to sacrifice herself to control the primordial flame, but I did not expect everything to play out the way it did. Ethan was suspicious from the start, but bringing up that he is descended from Epimetheus was particularly intriguing. Ethan does seem to be taking matters into his own hands, and I wonder what exactly Prometheus is trying to accomplish by pretty much allowing Ethan to have free reign by remaining in the background, seemingly in the guise of a robed figure known as Silos. It seems inevitable that at some point, Bel will have to fight him, possibly for the Sword of the Flame that Epimetheus once used. It's definitely no coincidence that the story brought a lot of attention to that sword. Now for the ending in part 1 and what the future parts of the story may entail. We have a heartbreaking scene between Bel and Hestia, especially when Hestia plays the Artemis card on him. I'm glad Omori-sensei is exploring a timeline where Bel is affected by the events of Aedes Vesta. It adds an extra dimension to Bel's character because the situation is very similar with Hestia, and he doesn't want Hestia to have the same ending that Artemis had, which brings us to the surprise reveal at the end. Bel wakes up outside Olympia and sees Artemis in front of him. Also, it was a great touch with how they synced up the sound of a heartbeat with the images of her. Just how is Artemis back? If we're going by the rules of the movie and DanMemo's exclusive extra epilogue, Artemis shouldn't be able to come back to the lower world for almost 10,000 years after Aedes Vesta. Since we don't know where Ilia ended up after Vesta pushed everyone away, it makes me wonder if Artemis was somehow able to possess her. Or maybe Ilia was somehow exempt from being pushed back as a priestess of Vesta and is still inside Olympia with Ethan. The main problem, of course, is that the statuses of Hestia Familia have now been locked, so they don't have access to their fauna and as a result, the strength of an adventurer. Are they going to depend on Welf somehow being able to make magic swords for the party to overcome their locked statuses? Even then, they're lacking agility and strength. Is it possible for Artemis to override this situation? Even then, only Bel is eligible to be converted to a different Familia if conversion was possible. Lily, Welf, Mikoto, and Haruhime are all recent additions to the Familia, with conversions being limited to once a year for adventurers. Maybe Artemis is somehow able to come back as an alter ego of Hestia? I'm just grasping at straws here. I'm curious on how Omori-sensei will explain the Artemis situation. We did get the One Love story released after part 1 of Aedes Vesta, and while it's not quite the full adaptation of the short novel that was released to go along with Aedes Vesta, we did get to see some of the goddess's time in heaven in visual novel form. With so much cut from the story, such as Aphrodite and Artemis meeting in the lower world, before the events of the movie and mentions of Hera and the Heaven, it's interesting they chose to keep the small mention of Athena, the last of the 3 virgin goddesses. It's either a nice nod or a hint that she may show up later in the event. Having Artemis come back and potentially an Athena appearance could make for a really cool moment in the story, because we could potentially see all 3 virgin goddesses together. Then of course we have what I think is the craziest moment of the end, the reveal of Apollo and Hyacinthus being in the area. Though I really hope Apollo tones it down on the creepiness. I know the anime dialed it up to 11. He's definitely a character I don't think anyone expected to see again. What makes this interesting, however, is the fact that in Greek mythology, Apollo is the brother of Artemis. Previously, before Air the Orion was released in theaters, I speculated on whether or not the movie would tease Apollo for Season 2 by bringing up that sibling connection. However, when it comes to danmachi, Omori-sensei doesn't seem to address familial connections among the gods, but we did get an acknowledgement of Hephaestus and Aphrodite's romantic relationship, so it would be strange if Artemis and Apollo were to meet in this event and not have some previous relationship established between the two. It would also be a good chance to develop Apollo into a more likable character, though he was never meant to be one. In any case, I'm just very excited to see that Artemis is coming back, as I feel like there was some wasted potential in such a likable character to only be used for a non-canon movie. So even if Aedes Vesta is not canon to the light novel storyline, I appreciate these extra moments with Artemis. It'll be especially interesting if Artemis and Aphrodite meet once again, and how that may affect how Aphrodite sees Belle, because given by the DanMemo exclusive ending to One Love, Aphrodite completely blames Belle for what happened to Artemis, as if Belle didn't blame himself enough already. Poor dude. My eyes were watering along with him during that first viewing of the movie. That sums up a few of my thoughts about the first part of Aedes Vesta. Again, I'd like to apologize for how long it took for me to get this video out. You can blame my terrible time management skills and my descent into Hololive hell. I'll be better about part 2. I do wonder about the length of part 2 because I think part 2 of Estrella Record dragged on for quite a bit longer than was necessary, but that may be partly due to what I thought was an unpolished translation. Plus, we have some exciting developments with Artemis and Apollo to address, so there should be a good amount of story to cover before the climax in part 3. Again, feel free to comment on your favorite parts of the story and what you think may happen in future parts. We'll probably get a new PV very soon for part 2, so some of the theories we've been making may get shot down pretty quickly. If you'd like to see more danmachi and light novel content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, and join my Discord. As always, continue enjoying your time avenging Aurario, the dungeon, and Olympia. This is Lorne, your guild advisor, signing out.